Hello everyone, and welcome back to the GeForce SC2 Pro-Am. I am Day 9.
And I am Husky, and today we have an extremely epic matchup, Sean. This is between two players who I would say could easily have been in the finals, duking it out. In the bottom left side, it is going to be IM's MVP, and who's his opponent in the top right,
In the
Sean?
top right, it's going to be a rematch from MLG Anaheim.
Yeah.
It is Slayer's MMA. It's MMA versus MVP. If you do recall, the grand finals of MLG Anaheim, MVP took down MMA 2-1. MMA very nearly pushed that to another extended series. However, he lost. So this is his chance for revenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is going to be from the round of 8, I believe, Sean. Is that correct?
It is the third round of the winner's bracket, indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you are a fan of one of these players, but there's a very high chance that you are, just because they are extremely strong players and very charismatic as well. Was able to watch them play there at MLG. But yeah, so if they lose this game, they will be bumped down to the loser's bracket. And Sean, I do want to say that the players of this caliber, even if they get knocked down into the loser's bracket at any round, there's still a very high chance of them making it to the finals.
That is absolutely true. I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of really good players in the lowers bracket.
That is
For
true.
instance, Slayer's Boxer, Sheth, both in the lowers bracket, big fan favorites. We saw last week some of their results. One of those players, if they keep battling through the lowers, will have to be against one of these players. Right now, we do see IM MVP planting down the barracks, followed by the refinery. Meanwhile, in the main of MMA, we see again a refinery into barracks. This is pretty much the standard for any player from Slayers.
Oh, absolutely, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Blue Flame Hellions out of that. Of course, it does seem to be kind of the de facto TvT build that a lot of Terrans are doing, and then they will be transitioning into different units. We've seen Viking timing pushes out of players like Select and things like that. So anything can happen here. Now, I do want to mention the map is Crossfire. This is a map that is not used as heavily. It is a very tall map, and there's a lot of different paths for units to move around. It can prove to be very interesting, especially when siege tanks are involved, because you can lock down some of those alleyways, but then there's even more routes of attack for those Blue Flame Hellions, and if someone tries to early expand, then there's always going to be that threat of that early Hellion pressure, which right now, it does look like MMA, he was getting the add-on there on the barracks right next to the factory. So, Sean, that's telling me at least one of these players is going to be getting Hellions.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen many players go straight for the Blue Flame Hellion, except Slayer's team members have been getting the fast Reaper, and wow, there it is, again, really wanting to get that Reaper out, do a little bit of harassment. Meanwhile, we see MVP doing the much more standard, oh, supply blocked, oh my god, Husky, how deeply embarrassing.
Yeah, that's actually an extremely early supply block there. Now, we'll see if it plays a huge role. It might, because Reapers can prove to be extremely annoying. However, Sean, he is making a lot of Marines here, so I think he's going to be okay, but a little bit of Reaper Micro can take out a couple of Marines, but his idea here is most likely not to win, although this looks very familiar from last week, Sean, where MMA is going to be going for the Reaper Hellion push, where they move out with just the one, but it has been completely scouted, so I feel that MVP will be prepared. He knows exactly what's coming his way.
And, you know, it's really interesting. The Hellions have become increasingly popular, the Blue Flame Hellion, and, of course, the Viking to control air. But generally, players use those units as a stepping stone to hop into bigger units like siege tanks or maybe like a Marine Marauder play. But, you know, what we've been seeing lately is just straight Hellion Viking early attacks with no other units. Players really like how much damage the Vikings can soak up and the damage that the Hellions can deal out. Looks like that little poke by MMA didn't do that much damage, but he will get the chance to scout up into the main.
Yeah, and that's the thing about this map, is there are a lot of surface area for that Reaper to get inside the main. He's got to see that starport. He's got to see what's going on. This is the strength of getting this early Reaper, is that you can see what's going on. It looks like he will end up losing that Reaper. 0 kills there.
God.
However, yeah, the Gibbs go flying across the screen.
Wow.
But he was able to see exactly what was going on there, Sean, and he's going to be getting his own starport right now, and he does have that squirt gun upgrade there for his Blue Flame Hellions.
Yes, indeed, the squirt gun upgrade. This is way back, you know, when I would buy those ultra super power water guns.
Oh, God.
Like the CPS 2000, the constant pressure system, and actually had a backpack that you would wander around with.
Right.
You honestly looked like a flamethrower guy from Command & Conquer 1.
And then, of course, you'd go around killing Marines and Zerglings, which is what they're going to attempt to do here. But it does look like we will be transitioning into the Hellion versus Hellion battle. Positioning is going to be very crucial here. A third Hellion is going to be engaging this, and it looks like even losses for both players here. 1 Hellion apiece as the other one tries to find a way to escape. But at this point, Sean, the Blue Flame is already done for MMA, so it means he's going to have a huge advantage.
And even though it might look like MMA was a little bit behind, I mean, the food counts have evened up, but it's the add-ons that we see is a big lead right now for MMA. MVP just now finishing up his add-ons, now going for that reactor, and we also see Cloak coming out by MVP. That old relic unit, the Banshee, some more pushing happening by MMA. Looks like he will get successfully repelled, but we really just don't see players using Banshees as much as they used to. This used to be standard almost 100% of the time opening in this matchup.
Oh, absolutely. They're extremely good. If you micro them perfectly, you can take out the Marines. And look at this. It is going to be a hidden expansion over at the high yield. And this is very risky, especially if you're going up against a Cloak Banshee as well. Although cloaking is not done. Is he going to get sniped here? The angling was perfect there by the Vikings. Like he was a mind reader in this game. The cloaking seconds away from being done. And he does have another Banshee on the way, but it's not quite done yet. And Sean, losing that Banshee that early, that can spell disaster, because look, now the Raven's going to be out in time by the time this Banshee gets here. So it's going to be really, really tough for these Banshees to do too much harassment unless MMA does a severe lack of anti-air, but he already has 2 Vikings, can easily get out more. You're mentioning the add-ons playing a huge role. They absolutely have so far.
An MMA with total space lockdown, going for those ultra-fast units, the Vikings, the Hellions. Now there's a Banshee popping up for MVP. Back in the base for MVP, we see just the usual tank, Marine, Banshee mix. No command center in sight for MVP, amazingly. He's just going to continue to apply pressure, and oh no! SCV was killed. Command center has completely stopped construction. And again, MMA going for these really cheapo units, getting another factory, and that's a very interesting placement for that.
Yeah, we'll see exactly what he plans to make out of there. Now, his command center has been spotted. The Raven has spotted the Banshee, so this is kind of the awkward situation where they can't attack each other, but the Viking can finish the job. And the cloaking, even if he uses it, the Raven's already right-clicked on there. He is going to be able to follow it around, or at least micro it around a little bit. He should be able to snipe that. MVP going to already be down 2 Banshees. And Sean, when you're going on one base play, trying to do a lot of damage with the timing, I mean, he just hasn't done any significant amount of damage with these.
I mean, the Banshees are still in production for MVP. Amazingly, not a single command center in sight. Doesn't even have enough money for the command center, but here comes the straight push from MVP. Siege mode just finishing up. This is going to be some very, very nice timing, and MMA has built nothing but the cutesy units, but not really the ones that can deal well with a lot of tanks and a very big army. These Marines are going to have to be positioned absolutely perfectly. And now the Viking land, and there's the engagement, and now we see the auto turrets getting thrown down. MMA trying to pick off these Marines from MVP, but wow, look at that cleanup from MVP.
Yeah, he was barely able to do that there, as the positioning of the Hellions wasn't the best. A couple of the first shots were attacking siege tanks. Hellions do not do additional damage versus that, but the Marines are lined up. He wasn't able to finish the job, though, and he has lost most of his units. All he has is Vikings. Vikings are okay on the ground, but that is a lot of siege tanks now. Is he going to have siege mode of his own in time? I don't know if he's going to, as this march is now coming inside of his main base. It does look like the siege tank's going to be positioned on the low ground. Is the splash damage for these tanks going to be enough right here? He's attempting to break up here. You got to remember, he has lost a lot of units to the Vikings, so it looks for now like losing those Banshees was too much. More SCVs being brought off the line, but this attack has been delayed. Now the SCVs are in an awkward spot in the center of the map, but the expansion for MMA has been locked down. But does it really matter right now, as he was able to hold?
I mean, this is an extremely unusual position for MMA. His entire build order relies on him controlling the center of the map. His fast units, the Vikings, the Hellions, really, really cheap to build in large numbers. Those are supposed to keep pushing back these big, strong armies from MVP, but MVP hitting a really scary timing and positioning his units well enough that he has sliced MMA away from his own gold expansion. Now we see MMA desperately trying to get up some sort of mining. We'll likely have to destroy these destructible backdoor rocks to take this expo, and it looks like MVP will actually get his own base up and running earlier with a big swell of barracks on the way.
Yeah, and he also, I mean, the expansion timing was so delayed, but the fact of the matter is that he has delayed MMA's expansion a greater deal. The SCVs cannot transfer over there. You mentioned having to destroy those rocks. That's just going to take even more time, and he is going to have a contained setup upon himself. Right now, he is getting his own siege mode, but he's just going to be lower in the siege tank count, it looks like, as well, as if Marines and Marauders start flowing out of those barracks. I mean, it's 83 supply to 71 right now. His siege mode still is not done, so he really has no chance of moving out here anytime soon. One siege tank here going to try and take out a couple of Marines. Looks like he will be able to get those. So a slight victory for him. It does even up the supply counts exactly, but at this point he has no map presence and is going to have to try and do some harassment with these Hellions. The expansion is not fully saturated quite yet, but it does look like the Vikings are going to be able to shut this down.
Not too many worker kills yet for MMA. He's trying to drop these Hellions. He really needs to do some wonders with these. But it looks like he will end up losing everything. Another huge blow for MMA. And MVP, I think, very, very smartly ends up pulling back. It's a very easy position to overcommit to a contain and split yourself too thin. But especially after that drop, pinned so many units back home. Look at that, 2 tanks, so many Marines. Looks like MVP will be retreating for the time being.
And it looks like he's going to attempt to secure his own natural, realizing the top left side is way too vulnerable. A couple of Hellions going to try and run down here, do a lot of damage, but he has split up the siege tanks. He will be able to clean this up. Now, the tanks were able to kill a lot of the Hellions and weaken that army a little bit, but I think that MMA definitely came out the victor in that battle. Now, it looks like MVP is going to be the one on the defensive. He does have 2 siege tanks and fairly well positioned there to try and hold that, but he does not have the high ground advantage right now. He will have the defender's advantage and that his reinforcements get there quickly. Although the Banshee's finally kicking in, even though it's in kind of the mid-game, moving into the late game, the Banshee able to kill 4 workers, 1 last worker there before it's finally going to get taken out. The Vikings have been doing an impeccable job cleaning up that harassment. And Sean, what does the units tab show on workers? I'm curious because they've both been losing quite a bit. 43 SCVs for MVP right now, so that's going to show you his huge macro advantage moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't just the units killed or the workers killed with those Banshees. This is also the fact that there has only been 1 command center landed for MMA for quite some time. And the Banshees, amazingly, though they might seem like a unit that you should really stop building considering your opponent has the Raven and Mass Vikings, no, it looks like the cloaking and positioning just a little bit too good from MVP.
And this is getting so frustrating for him. I can't believe this harassment is continuing forward as it is now taking out a lot of SCVs outside of this natural, and this Banshee being extremely cost effective. 8 or 9 kills on that Banshee before it finally gets taken out. One of those kills was a very valuable siege tank as well, and it does look like MVP has also transitioned into getting a lot of Vikings of his own. The thing he's going to have to be careful of is that point defense drone from the Raven. If he can secure air superiority, though, he will be able to kill these Hellions and siege tanks quite easily with either just 1 or 2 Banshees, which is something we've seen time and time again in TvT. But both players have found themselves in uncomfortable positions throughout this game. I would definitely say that MMA is going to be a little bit behind just because of that severe worker disadvantage, especially if MVP decides to take a 3rd base. He's going to be way, way ahead. But so far, the Raven going to be keeping a lockdown on those Banshees.
Because MVP has this lead in terms of units, his best counter to a point defense drone is to have a lot of units that shoot objects that the point defense drone can shoot down. Might seem counterintuitive, but given the fact that he doesn't have that many Vikings, well, that's okay because the Marauders are going to be absorbing a lot of point defense drone hits, and vice versa. So suddenly, the fact that MMA is behind means that he can't really use these point defense drones to give him that much more of an advantage. We see MVP slowly swinging around to the right side. Some Blue Flame Hellions are going to try to take the opportunity to swing into the front. They managed to get 1 worker. And at the natural expansion, no Banshee in the main. This is going to have to be the key stronghold point for MMA going into the mid-game. If MVP breaks that, it is going to be complete and imminent death for the Terran player MMA. There's literally nothing he can do if he loses this hold.
Oh, absolutely, because, I mean, his economy, I've just been keeping an eye on his supply. It is way lower than MVP's, and just the amount of workers he has. There's that 3rd base I was talking about. He's going to be throwing it down, potentially trying to secure the high-yield expansion, but you got to remember that there's so many cliffs on this map that siege tanks can lock down expansions pretty easily. TvT on this map is very interesting because securing a 3rd can be extremely difficult just because positioning is so incredibly important here. And right now, I mean, MMA, while he does have good position on the map, is he going to be overcommitting himself? Now, he does have a lot more air units. He has added in a lot of Vikings, mixing in that 1 Banshee to try and do harassment to these ground units, but I think MVP wisely adding in those Marines. They completely ignore that point defense drone, can focus down that 1 Banshee, and he also has Marauders on the ground, so it will come down to positioning. But at this point, I mean, MMA does have a pretty strong foot here, but he needs to be very careful with every single unit he has. He is way behind in supply. He'll be behind in an expansion as well, so he's trying to be cost effective here, killing off these tanks with just 1 Banshee, which is exactly what he needs to do.
But it looks like a couple Marines swing forward for MVP, and MMA will take them down. This is a great positioning for MMA. That is not the best positioning by MMA. But keep in mind, having all these tanks up in the center locks MVP in his base. There's 1 entrance here and another entrance here. Both of them obviously very well protected by those tanks, but the army from MVP is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we are seeing the 2 different themes of their strategies. MMA with aggression and positioning, and MVP with good old-fashioned good economy management and macro. Now the Viking count from MVP manages to finally push away the count from his opponent. And it looks like a huge push coming in from MVP from all sides.
He's going to attempt to break this right now. He may even land the Vikings if he wants to deal as much damage as possible. But for now, it looks like he's just going to use them for anti-air. And so many Marauders getting the sandwich here. This is exactly how you have to break this kind of contain with good positioning.
Wow.
But it looks like MMA is going to hold for now. But there's only 2 siege tanks remaining. The Vikings landing on the ground. So it does look like MVP will be able to clean this up with his vastly superior numbers. Now, he did lose a few more units in that battle than his opponent. But the fact of the matter is that he broke that contain. He can prevent that third base from ever getting fully saturated. And again, since his economy has been so far ahead, he's going to be able to re-macro up that army much quicker. Now, it does look like both players attempting to expand on the right side of the map, but I mean, MVP, it just has air superiority and a massive ground army at this point, so it's going to be really, really tough for our Red Terran.
I mean, that's absolutely true, Husky. If you end up losing your whole army and positioning when you're going mech, that is horrible news. If you end up trading armies and you're making a lot of Marine Marauder, that's actually technically quite good for you. You end up just rebuilding, working in small numbers, and if you've ever seen a small number of Marauders versus a small number of tanks, it is not too pretty for them tanks. So MMA actually in a much worse position than this would look just by glancing at the food counts. I mean, you already know he's in bad shape, but it's much, much worse because what position does MMA take now? He essentially has to pray that MVP does not find this expansion.
Now, he does turn that into a planetary fortress. The Vikings are going to spot it right away. It looks like, nope, he is going to micro back. And the planetary fortress will help prevent Hellion harassment, but at the same time, it cannot completely stop it, just because Hellions can easily one-shot workers if they are in a couple of, at least 2 or 3, and he's just camping that starport right now. He is basically forcing MVP, or MMA rather, to have to get out some Marines to try and deal with this, but at this point, he is so heavily committed to that mech that he is deciding to go ahead and get out that Thor. Now, usually, when you see a transition to the Thors, the Terran player is going to be in a much better spot than he is right now. Here comes the drop into the main. This is going to be Marauders, and he may snipe the Thor as soon as it spawns. Actually, it's building at the expansion, but he's going to focus down these add-ons instead, preventing any amount of units from coming out of here. That one siege tank is going to get taken out, and this drop is going to do massive damage, Sean. He really cannot afford to reproduce these production facilities.
Oh, MVP just doing the smart thing, just trying to catch everything a little bit out of position. This is this positioning problem that you always encounter when you end up going mech. This is why you desperately need those Vikings up when you're going mech to prevent this sort of air control from ruining your defense. Now we see the Hellions trying to step up to defend against the Marauders. That is not going too well. On the minimap, we see a huge flood of medevacs and Marauders. The Thor popping into the fray. Gonna get a few shots off, but ugh. There's the spot on the planetary fortress, completely and totally vulnerable. No mining even begun by MMA. And it's only a matter of time before MVP takes this game.
Oh, absolutely, Sean. I don't know how MMA can come back from this. He's about half the supply of his opponent. He does have one Thor, but when you're going against that many Marauders, I mean, this many Marauders is good against all those units you're looking at right now.
Oh,
and
no.
the positioning's got to be good. He right-clicks it right, gets them right on top of those units and attack moves. There is going to be the GG from game number 1. But, Sean, I think it's showing us that both these players are equally matched. We saw them at MLG playing extremely well, and they're doing a good show here with 2 very different builds as the game progressed forward. So what a good way to start the series, and it's a best of 5, so we're guaranteed at least 2 more games.
Crazy back and forth throughout the start of the game. I'm actually blown away at how the food count swung up and swung down, but again, MVP manages to do magical things with the same units that everyone else has, but he just has these amazing timings and beautiful decision making. So let's see if MMA can put a win on the table in game number 2, or whether MVP will put the series to match point.